This video is for my cousin Faith and my cousin Faith only. If you are not my cousin Faith, well, like it's cool. You can still watch it. I won't be upset, but like it's just it's for her. Faith, you asked for book recommendations. I told you I'd put them in a YouTube video, so here we now are, a YouTube video with me giving you book recommendations. I've split this video up into poetry, plays, fiction, graphic novels, and then I don't have, there's only 2 books. I don't have a category. You can find them all time-stamped in the description down below. Some of these books I may have already recommended to you or even to Cody. I tried to avoid books that I've already bought for you, like The Opposite of Loneliness by Marina Keegan. I've bought that for you in the past. I'm gonna recommend things that I haven't given to you or recommended before. Some of them I might have recommended to Cody or even given to Cody as a gift. There's one of these books, it's a poetry collection. I know I've given to Cody as a gift. I'm just not sure if I've given it to you. So if I have, I apologize. But I tried to be conscious of that because there's a couple books here on my shelf that I absolutely adore and love that I think you would love too, but I've already sent and given to you. To start off, I've got No Matter the Wreckage, poems by Sarah Kay. Sarah Kay is one of my favorite poets in the world. I love her to death. This collection is beautiful and is amazing. I love Sarah's writing for how rich the imagery is and how beautiful her storytelling is in the use of imagery and metaphor. So many of these poems are great at just like talking about what it means to discover oneself, reflecting on childhood memories and just moments of impact throughout her life. Great collection. One of my favorite poets in the world. If you want to see some amazing spoken word poetry too, her spoken word performances are chef kiss. Beautiful. Next, there's Depression and Other Magic Tricks from Sabrina Benaim. Toronto poet, Canadian poet. I'm actually taking a workshop with her right now. Amazing human being. Great poet. I think this was one of the first poetry collections that I ever bought and I ever read. Like, it's one of the reasons I started writing poetry, this book here. It brings so much comfort to things that can often be so taboo about our own emotional and mental states. She writes in a way that makes you feel less alone with the things that so often make us feel loneliest. This is the book I think I might have already given you as a gift. I know I've definitely given this to Cody. I gave this to Cody for Christmas a couple years ago. I just don't know if I've given it to you, so recommend. 10 out of 10. The last poetry collection I'll recommend for you is Lord of the Butterflies by Andrea Gibson. I am enamored and captured by any of Andrea's writing. They are phenomenal. They have such a beautiful way of creating metaphor and imagery that just gets tangled up and just wraps around your brain. I found so much comfort in the exploration of self that Andrea has in all of their poems. Again, another amazing spoken word artist to watch videos online. They do this really awesome thing where some of their poems, they combine sounds and songs from artists that they collaborate with. I have their other collection as well, Take Me With You. It's so good. I've got plays to recommend. I read a lot of plays. I'm a theater kind of guy. You know that. I am always down to recommend that people consume theater. I am of the opinion that plays are always better when they are heard aloud and performed rather than when they are read. However, being able to publish a play is a great way to make the story itself accessible and last longer than when the curtain falls. So I've got 3 plays here. I'll recommend them. Give them a read. It's funny though, I say that it's better to see plays rather than read them. I don't think I've ever actually seen either of these 3 plays live. I've only read them, which is, maybe that's a little hypocritical of me, but it's okay, we'll move on from that, it's fine. The first I have, if you've never read it before, Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. The comedy. The comedy is just great. It's witty, it's clever, it's snappy, it's punchy. I've done scene readings and I've seen online scene readings of this play. It's especially when you hear it aloud or you're performing it yourself, you really pick up on how smart and witty and quick all these characters are. Oscar Wilde does a great job of just finding the comedy in the absurdity. Good, funny stuff. Another funny play, I believe this is actually a Canadian writer too, Maurice Panich, 7 Stories. Super funny concept. This is one of those plays where you're like, yeah, this is a play. This isn't like something that could be adapted into a movie or a television show. Like, the way that this story is best consumed is through the medium of theater. This man stands on the ledge of an apartment building, and the entire play is him on the ledge of this apartment building, and people pop out of their windows and have conversations with him, and to no one is it absurd or terrifying or alarming that there is a man standing on the ledge. Super funny, wacky characters. As like a theater person and like with like an actor director brain, I'm like, you could do so many cool things with the staging of this play, with like how to end this play. Is good play. I recommend looking for something funny. And then the last play I have is Scorched by Wajdi Mouawad. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. This actually isn't originally in English. It's translated by Linda Gaboreau. Again, apologies if I'm pronouncing that last name wrong. Okay, it's originally translated from French. It was presented in France in March 2003. I've read it a couple times now, and it's the kind of play that hits you heavy, makes you uncomfortable, upsets you, and then makes you think. Its story sits with you. I first read this play in I think it was my dramaturgy class in university, and it created a lot of really interesting, unique discussion about the kind of stories you can tell through the medium of theater, and the ways you go about telling certain moments within a story. I will say, content warning, there is sexual violence and assault within this play. It can get really heavy at times, but it's a great read. It's a great read. It's a play. It's a great play. I recommend it. Fiction, I've got like a wide range of stuff. Some of it, I think one of these are adult, one of these are children, and then there's a lot of like young adult, like teen kind of stuff. So to start off, I've got like a children's fiction book, The Secret Garden. I really like it. I think it's considered a classic. It's by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Like every classic, there's a couple moments where you're like, that's a little racist, or I don't know about that. Like how the author refers to people from India is kind of problematic. The use of language we just blame on the fact that this book was written in 1911. So obviously, how we in Western culture know how to respect and talk about people from other countries and ethnicities is different than how someone from Britain in 1911 would do so. I really actually loved the fantasy surrounding this. It's magic and fantasy within reality and from the lens of a child. It's really sweet, really heartwarming. Of all like the children's classics you think of from the Victorian era, like Peter Pan or Alice in Wonderland, I think they're all from around the same time period. I could be wrong. I'm no book expert. I just like reading. Secret Garden would have to be my favorite. I actually prefer it over Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland, which I have read the originals of and seen adaptations, movies, and plays. Witch and Wizard, James Patterson. Okay, moment of honesty here. I don't actually remember this book series super well. I remember it's about these two siblings who are on the run because in this world, magic users are like against the law. I recommend this because I remember really loving it when I read it. It's very like high fantasy, and I'm pretty sure you like fantasy stories, Faith. If you don't, forget about that book. It's irrelevant. Don't worry about it. But if you do, give this a look. Witch and Wizard by James Patterson if you haven't already. Also, moment of honesty, Margaret Atwood, The Edible Woman. Want to check out more Margaret Atwood? I recommend this just because Margaret Atwood I like as a writer, but I haven't read a lot of her stuff, and this is like her only book of hers that I own. Again, I don't remember it super well. I don't know why I want to recommend this to you. I can't give you a specific reason. It's been a couple of years since I've read it, and I've never reread it. When I was looking at books to recommend you, I was like, I want to recommend this one to Faith. It's all about this young woman exploring and discovering her own independence and self-identity within love and relationships. Just give it a look. Give it a look. If anything I just word vomited sounds appealing to you. Maybe it's because you're a young woman in her 20s and this is like a young woman in her 20s. I don't know. Maybe it is that shallow of a reason. I feel there's more to it though. My brain and my heart says there's more to it that you're recommending this book to Faith. So Faith, here you go. The Book Thief, Marcus Suzak. This is originally for like young, this might even be for like children. If you haven't read The Book Thief, it's about this little girl living in Germany during the Holocaust. She's not Jewish, and it's about her witnessing everything that happened during the Holocaust from the lens of a child on the side that was causing so much harm and grief. She ends up having to stay with this older couple because of the war, and this older couple actually turns out to be housing and helping hide Jewish people. It's been years since I read this book. I was a kid or a young teenager when I first read this book, but I just remember being very impacted by it and being very emotional by it. Like, this is one of the first books I ever read that brought me to tears. It unsettled a lot within me as a kid. I probably should read it again, because I genuinely only remember the premise. There are coffee stains on this. It was impactful for me when I read it. Maybe it won't be as impactful for you because you're now like an adult with a cohesive understanding of all the things that this book touches on. Give it a try, if you want. I've got The Alchemist, The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel by Michael Scott. This is a book series. I started reading this when I was in high school, and I think the final book came out like 3-4 years ago. Every time I picked up one of these books, I was like, yes, and I just read it all in one sitting. Nicholas Flamel and his wife, they are immortal because they discovered the secret to eternal life. It's like a magical stone. If you've seen Harry Potter 1, the Philosopher's Stone, the Sorcerer's Stone, wherever you're from, that's the stone, that's that Nicholas Flamel. They discover a pair of twins who are meant to fulfill a prophecy. I don't even remember what the prophecy is about, but it's this really cool story of Nicholas Flamel and his wife taking these two twins and training them to become magic users who can like protect and bring about mythology. It's just really cool fantasy, mythology, magic, gods, and all that kind of stuff. Go for it. And then the last like fiction book I'll recommend is The Marrow Thieves by Cherry Demaline. The Hunger Games, Divergent. Those books suck compared to this. This is an indigenous writer. Cherry Demaline is Métis, kind of in that same like young adult post-apocalyptic genre that like everyone was obsessed with in 2014 and 2015. It's set in a post-apocalyptic Canada, North America, where all the world's natural resources have been almost completely depleted. Mankind is struggling to survive in a world where nature is dying off and we are struggling to live. And as the environment and as the world began to die, as the lakes began to drain, as the forests began to become depleted, humans lost the ability to dream. Everyone lost the ability to dream except for people of indigenous cultures. And what begins to happen is the powerful governments, they begin to hunt down indigenous peoples and they begin to take their bone marrow and turn them into dream dust that they almost take like a drug so that they can dream just like the indigenous peoples do. And so it's about a group of young kids and young people trying to survive while they're being hunted by the government, trying to find other indigenous communities and peoples that they can connect with and that they can survive with. I remember thinking the concept was so unique and interesting. It's so well written, the concept's great, the characters are awesome. I prefer it way more than something like The Hunger Games. So if you love The Hunger Games, you'll love this even more. I promise you. 10 out of 10, recommend. There you go. I've been on a huge graphic novel kick, so I have more than just this to recommend, but I thought I would leave it at a simple amount. Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. Alison Bechdel is one of my favorite graphic novel artists, writers. She does both. Fun Home is a autobiography graphic novel depicting her relationship with her father alongside her own discovery of her sexuality as a lesbian. And what's really cool about this is that they parallel and they coincide within this one story because as Allison discovered her own sexuality, her father was outed for his and took his own life. It is a really awesome, interesting story with lots of psychological retrospection on the state of the self and how much of who we are is formed by nature and by nurture. Alison Bechdel has another great graphic novel called Are You My Mother? Exploring, it's on my bookshelf up there, exploring her relationship with her mother, both at this point in time, before this point in time, and during this point in time. It jumps around her life. It has been adapted into a Broadway musical. I also recommend that musical so much. The soundtrack, the show is just... I really love this graphic novel, and Alison Bechdel is amazing. If you're looking for something fun and sci-fi, I'm currently reading through the Descender series from Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. Jeff Lemire is the writer, Dustin Nguyen is the artist. It's such a cool story. It's super sci-fi. This little robot dude is like the first robot of his kind to wake up in like 10 years in a universe that has come to hate robots because of some large catastrophe that happened 10 years before he woke up. The art style is super interesting. I want to call it soft and very pencil heavy. Like it's almost like watercolor painted and pencil drawn. Like there are no hard lines throughout all of this. The watercoloring of these panels is sick. I just finished volume 4 the other night. It's a 6-part series with a sequel series currently being released. Volume 4, I've got 2 more volumes to go, and I'm already like, shit, I need to read the sequel series too, because the world that Lemire and Nguyen have built is so rich and interesting, and it's unique too, which is always super cool for sci-fi. It's so easy, things could be done over or be predictable. This does some really cool stuff. I've got Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This is another really awesome, interesting autobiographical graphic novel series. Art Spiegelman tells, I guess it's not even so much an autobiography as it is a biography. It's him telling his father's story of surviving the Holocaust while also interviewing his father to tell this story. Something like really cool that Art Spiegelman does with the art of the book is the Jewish people are drawn as like, that says mice, and then the Germans and the Nazis are drawn as cats. And then people from different countries and parts of the world, different races, ethnicities, they're drawn as different animals. The story is great. The story is super interesting. I would say Mouse set a standard when it first came out for what it meant to write biographical graphic novels. It's a 2-part series. Oftentimes you can get it in like a collection. I have the 1 and 2 collection. This is the cover for part 2. This is the cover for part 1. I will be honest, it has been a couple years since I read this. I originally read it for a class I took in college. I still recommend this to be anyone who's interested in getting into graphic novels or really enjoys graphic novels that tell the stories of real people. It's really well written, has a really awesome art style. And then the last graphic novel I recommend, I think I mentioned this to you and Cody. I think Cody recommended this as well. Paper Girls. Another really cool like sci-fi fantasy by Brian K. Vaughan as the writer and Cliff Chiang as the artist. I apologize if I'm saying Cliff's last name wrong. While Descender is like super sci-fi, we're in space, it's thousands of years in the future. Paper Girls is about a group of 4 paper delivery girls caught up in this weird time travel heist story. Again, this one is only 6 parts. I picked this up like a month ago because I've been meaning to get around to it for years. I was talking with my buddy Malachi. He's like, no man, you have to read Paper Girls. So I picked it up and I read the entire collection within a week. Like I just kept going back. I couldn't put this story down. It is so cool. And so these last 2 books I want to recommend, they're in like the uncategorized category because they don't really have a lot in common. I mean, they're both books, but they don't have a lot in common in terms of genre. One is a short story collection and one is like a how-to-write book. Brenda Ueland, if you want to write. Ueland was a writer in 1938. She's kind of just a badass. You read the first few chapters and you're like, oh shit, this woman is a badass. And this entire book is all about being like, what anyone says. If you want to write, write. It doesn't matter if you're writing for pleasure, for profit. Just write, because we all have the capacity to tell stories and to write books and to write things. So just sit down and do it. This is one of those books that like I pick up and I read halfway and then I put it down and then I forget to pick it up again. So then 6 months later I pick it up and I say, I'm gonna start it all over again, and I begin at the beginning. So I can't tell you how it ends, because I've technically never finished this book, even though I've read it like 4 times. I recommended this to Cody a couple years ago, and I think she ended up buying the ebook version of it, and I think she actually finished it. So if you want to have like a more in-depth conversation about this book, talk to Cody. I'm sure she would also recommend it. I'm recommending this one because I don't remember if you still write. I know you used to. We haven't really talked about it for years, but I know you are still an avid reader and an avid lover of storytelling. And then the last book I want to recommend is Moose Meat and Wild Rice by Basil Johnson. This is just a collection of short stories. I'll read the back here. A unique book, a comic collection by a contemporary Ojibwe author who turns his talents to a mischievous, but never malicious, depiction of present-day Indians and Indian-white relations and the gentle satire cutting both ways. It's a really funny short story collection. Really funny, it's really charming. I don't think you need to be of Indigenous identity to enjoy the humor and these stories. I really recommend it. I thought it was a blast. I read it for my Indigenous Literature Studies course at university, and I couldn't put the book down. It was one of my favorite books that we read for that course. If you want something that you can just like pick up, read 20 pages, and then put it down and pick it up again later, give this one a look. I recommend it. Hopefully you loved this video, Faith. It was a lot longer than I thought it would be when I sat down to start filming. I think when you said, Bryce, please make me a recommendation video, I think you were joking, and I've just taken the bit too far, and now here you are, a whole YouTube video dedicated to you. I love you. Lots and lots. I hope you like some of these books, and if I've recommended anything that you've already read, I would love to talk to you about these books to see what you think about them. Cody, You are also welcome to this conversation, because even though this video is dedicated to Faith, I'm assuming you sat through it, and if you didn't, well, this is just awkward now, and we're gonna pretend like this isn't happening. And if anyone else sat through this whole video and you enjoyed these recommendations, please recommend books to me based on what I recommended to Faith. Not all of these are my favorite books. Some of these I just recommended because there was something about them that I was like, yes, I think Faith would like this. Some of those books I haven't read in years, some of those books I have read multiple times, and some of those books I have read recently. I'm reading a bunch more right now. Would love to hear some of your recommendations, so please message me or just drop them in the comments of this video. Faith, I love you lots. Hopefully we can talk more books in the future, but I hope you have a great rest of your day. Do you follow me on... You better subscribe to me. Faith, if you don't follow me on YouTube, I'm actually going to be kind of hurt. You should subscribe if you haven't... Faith, do you...